he didn't mean to. That's what Grace Mullane's killer argued.
There are new questions about the police investigation into the dating app death of a young woman, Lauren Smith Fields, in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
A jury is deliberating in the trial of an Evansville woman connected with a deadly incident on the city's west side. Glad to have you with us. Hope you're doing well.
On December 1, 2018, British backpacker Grace Mullane headed out onto the streets of Auckland, New Zealand, ready to meet a hopeful new love interest she had recently begun speaking to over the dating app Tinder. When days passed and her family were left unable to get in contact with her, an investigation into the 22-year-old's disappearance was launched. In a case that dominated headlines across the world, we're diving into the murder of Grace Mullane. Born on December 2, 1996, Grace was the third child of David and Gil Mullane, growing up in Brentwood, Essex. After graduating from the University of Lincoln in 2018 with a degree in advertising and marketing, Grace decided she would take a year out to travel before heading into the world of work. At the end of September that year, she wrote on Twitter, "Less than a month and counting." And soon enough, in October 2018, Grace waved goodbye to her friends and family and landed in her first destination, Peru. Grace documented her journeys and posted pictures of her new activities on Instagram, including times she spent outside with other travelers and llamas and dogs. After spending 6 weeks traveling around South America, Grace sets her sights on New Zealand. Arriving in the country on November 19th, Grace made her way to Auckland, New Zealand, where she checked into the base backpackers hostel and met with other fellow solo travelers from across the world. Young, free, single, and with her 22nd birthday fast approaching, Grace downloaded the popular dating app Tinder, where she began to chat with different tourists and locals across the city. Soon enough, Grace had arranged to meet one of her matches for a drink together at Sky City, an entertainment complex and casino in the center of the city. Grace left the hostel just after 5:30 p.m. on December 1st and made her way towards the complex wearing a black dress with white trainers. When she arrived less than 15 minutes later, she snapped a photo of herself next to a Christmas tree, sending the image to her family back in England. It wasn't long before Grace's date arrived, and the pair were caught on CCTV greeting each other with a hug and making their way up the escalators towards Andy's Burgers bar, where they would get a round of drinks. As the night continued, the pair were seen in a Mexican cafe across the road from the Sky City complex. Grace drank sangria while excitedly texting her friend that, "I'm on a date with a guy who is a manager of an oil company." The text continued as the night went on, with Grace telling her friends that they were getting smashed, and another saying, "I click with him so well," and "I will let you know what happens tomorrow." Sadly, Grace would never get the chance. After drinks at multiple different bars together, the pair decided to call it a night early on and headed back to Grace's Tinder match's serviced apartment, just over 500 meters away. Captured on CCTV entering the City Life apartment building at 9:40 p.m., Grace and the man are seen holding hands, with the man's arm placed around her shoulders. As the footage continues, the two get into the lift and step out onto the third-floor hallway, making their way to his apartment out of view. After 3 days of no contact, Grace's parents contacted the Auckland police, and an investigation into her disappearance was launched. Police discovered that on the night of December 1st, Grace had not returned back to the base backpackers hostel she had been staying at. In fact, none of the staff or other travelers had seen her since. Due to the exhaustive CCTV covering the city, it wasn't long before detectives were able to piece Grace's last known movements together and identify who she had last been seen with: 26-year-old Jesse Kempson. Jesse had grown up in Wellington, New Zealand, but moved to Auckland after becoming estranged with his family. Jesse was described by those who knew him to be a pathological liar. He would make up stories like he was the cousin of a famous rugby player, he played professional softball, and that he had cancer. All lies. Jesse struggled to hold down work, and even after moving to Auckland looking for a fresh start, his lies continued to catch up with him, leaving him reliant on welfare payments to afford to a part hotel at City Life he was currently staying in. Police uncovered the CCTV footage of Grace exiting the elevator with Jesse, heading for his apartment, but no trace of her leaving was found. Instead, suspicious footage of Jesse wheeling a stuffed suitcase from the building and into a hire car on December 2nd was found. Jesse was questioned by police and told detectives that he had indeed met with Grace on December 1st, but that they had gone their separate ways shortly after 10 p.m. that night. Jesse told detectives how when he went to message Grace after she left that night, he found that she had unmatched him. Assuming she just wasn't interested, Jesse told detectives that that was the last he had heard of her. But of course, that didn't explain the CCTV, and his lies quickly began to unravel. Detectives found that Jesse had rented a carpet cleaner and a red Toyota Corolla, as well as purchasing a shovel. Realizing that this was now likely to be a murder investigation, the hunt was on to find the 22-year-old's remains and begin to provide closure for her family. On December 8, 2018, after police found blood throughout Jesse's apartment, he was brought in for questioning once again. This time, his story had changed dramatically. Jesse told detectives how on December 1st, Grace had come back to his apartment. Once inside, she began talking about the popular book and film franchise 50 Shades of Grey. Soon enough, the pair were having rough but consensual sex. Jesse told detectives that Grace had asked Jesse to choke her. Jesse then detailed how as he complied, he had accidentally killed Grace. In a state of panic, Jesse put her body in a bag and drove 40 minutes away to bury her in a shallow grave near the Whitaker Ranges. The next day, December 9th, Grace's body was found near the Whitaker Ranges and less than 10 yards from the road. Numerous vigils and tributes to Grace were held across both New Zealand and Great Britain, and Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern spoke about the tragic murder and promised the country's support to her grieving family.
Firstly, I cannot imagine the grief of her family and what they will be experiencing and feeling right now. And my thoughts and prayers are with her father, David, who is in the country, her mother, Gillian, who cannot be here, and her wider family, friends, and loved ones.
After her body was recovered, an autopsy was conducted which revealed that she had died from strangulation. Marks on her arms and chest showed that she had been pinned down and gave everything to try and defend herself against Jesse. Jesse went to trial in late 2019, and though he and his team tried hard to degrade and defame Grace, telling the court how her death was accidental and a result of rough sex, the jury saw right through his lies. On December 22nd, he was found guilty and later sentenced to life in prison with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. On the morning of December 12, 2021, 23-year-old Lauren Smith Fields was found dead in her bed by a man she had met just hours earlier after connecting through the dating app Bumble. In what her family describes as a botched investigation, biased against Lauren due to the color of her skin, were looking at the suspicious death of the 23-year-old. A physiotherapist student at Norwalk Community College and social media influencer, Lauren Smith Fields had a bright future ahead of her. Living alone in Bridgeport, Connecticut, Lauren was preparing for her upcoming 24th birthday celebrations when she matched with a 37-year-old design engineer, Matthew LaFountain, on Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Within days of matching, the two were making plans to meet. Lauren invited the 37-year-old over to her apartment on the evening of December 11, 2021. According to Matthew, the pair spent the rest of the night drinking together and playing games, chatting and getting to know each other as the hours slid past before Lauren fell asleep on the sofa, and Matthew carried her to bed around 3 in the morning. At 6 a.m. the next day, Matthew woke up to find Lauren unresponsive with blood coming out of her nostril. Emergency services arrived. Within minutes, Lauren was pronounced dead on the scene, and though her ID and passport were in her apartment, no attempt by officials was made to contact her next of kin. Police spoke to Matthew at the apartment and immediately cleared him of any wrongdoing, later deeming that he was a really nice guy and there was no need to investigate. The day after Lauren had been found dead, December 13th, her mother, Chantel Fields, was frantic with worry after her daughter hadn't responded to any of her calls and texts. Just like before with Grace Mullane, Lauren's friends and family took her silence as completely out of the ordinary. Unable to wait any longer, Chantel Fields drove over to her daughter's apartment and was confused to find a note on the door that read, "If you're looking for Lauren, call this number." Chantel called the number, and on the other end of the line was Lauren's landlord, who told Chantel that her daughter had been found dead the day before. In shock and unable to take in what she was hearing, Chantel refused to believe what the landlord told her. In disbelief, that was the way she would find out about her daughter's death. Chantel contacted Bridgeport police and spoke to Detective Kevin Cronin, desperate for answers. Kevin assured Chantel that he would meet her at the apartment building in half an hour. Chantel waited and waited, but the detective never arrived. Chantel repeatedly attempted to call the detective, but each and every one of her calls went ignored.
The whole day goes by, no police reach out to the family at all.
Her close-knit family says they went to the apartment the next day after frantically calling and texting Lauren and were referred to a Detective Cronin.
Though the way in which she found out about Lauren's death was botched, Chantel made steps to ensure that the investigation into it wasn't. She let herself into the apartment and collected evidence police had failed to: a condom, over $1,000, bloody sheets, and a small unknown pill. The evidence found by Chantel was handed over to police, who failed to submit it to forensics. 6 weeks after her death, an autopsy report was released that concluded Lauren had died from an acute intoxication due to combined effects of fentanyl, promethazine, hydroxyzine, and alcohol. And with that, her death was ruled accidental. Horrified at how they had been treated throughout the investigation, Lauren's family did not take no for an answer. Bridgeport police had failed to collect evidence, failed to question Matthew LaFountain, and completely shut the family down when they simply asked for a fair investigation. Lauren was fit and healthy, leading an active plant-based lifestyle, and would never touch drugs. So why, in the hours after she met someone new, someone whose history we have no idea about off a dating app, had she suddenly died of an overdose? Something nobody in her life believed she had a part in. The story eventually gained traction on social media, with users aghast that Lauren's death had been ruled anything but a murder. Petitions were set up in support of reopening the investigation, and the family hired attorney Darnell Crossland, bringing action against the city of Bridgeport for failing to properly investigate the circumstances of the 23-year-old's sudden death. Though the case was horribly handled by Bridgeport police, there is hope. In January of 2022, 2 of the officers involved in handling the case were placed on administrative leave for their actions, though quietly brought back just 4 months later. Although the case is still officially open, Matthew has never been questioned and remains a free man to this day. But, as I said, there is hope. On December 2022, Roderick Porter was sworn in as Bridgeport's new police chief. In an interview after the ceremony, he spoke about how he and Lauren's family had recently connected and that he would be taking steps over the next few months to meet with them.
This is a new time for us, so accept us as a new time and give us a new opportunity to re-engage with you and mend any fences that were broken or develop any new relationships that we need.
Lauren's family continued to fight for justice for the 23-year-old and recently released a statement through their attorney, Darnell Crossland, saying, "We will not stop until we get justice for Lauren and the thousands of black girls that go missing in this country every year. We owe them equal rights and justice regardless of race, and we won't stop fighting until we get it." On October 19, 2021, 36-year-old Heidi Carter matched with a woman through a dating app and invited her and the woman's boyfriend to her Stinson Avenue home in Indiana. After Heidi's boyfriend caught the trio in a state of undress, what came next is now chillingly known as the Terror on Stinson Avenue. In a 3-way hookup gone wrong, we look at the case of Heidi Carter. 36-year-old Heidi Carter had had more than her fair share of run-ins with police over the years. With her rap sheet reporting a spree of low-level violent crimes, Heidi's criminal history ranged from domestic battery to breaking and entering and resisting arrest. Heidi matched with a woman through a dating app on October 19, 2021. The pair hit it off right away, and within hours, the woman and her boyfriend had been invited over to Heidi's home on 1801 Stinson Avenue. The three spent the evening drinking together before eventually one thing led to another, and they began to engage in sexual activity. As things heated up between Heidi and the couple, they were shocked to hear footsteps thundering through the house until suddenly, the door flung open and Heidi's 46-year-old boyfriend, Kerry Hammond, walked into the room. Grabbing a bat, Kerry began beating the pair and ignoring their pleas of ignorance. Instead of helping her guests, Heidi quickly switched sides, as if this had been a part of some sick setup planned by the couple. Heidi helped Kerry restrain the man and the woman with duct tape and watched as Kerry assaulted the woman. Minutes rolled into hours, but the savage attack had no end. After Carrie was finished with the woman, he returned back to beating her boyfriend, showing no mercy towards the man he had just caught Heidi with. Eventually, Carrie swapped his bat for a gun and stood over the pair, telling them that he could quite easily get rid of their bodies if they ended up dead that night. At one point during the attack, Heidi allegedly left the home for hours, and when she returned, the male victim, later identified as Timothy Ivy, had been killed after he had attempted to flee. Showing no sign of remorse, Heidi simply covered the man's body in blankets and duct tape and helped Carrie take the body out of the room. After the murder, the couple enlisted the help of a cleaner they had previously hired to help tidy up the scene. When the cleaner arrived, she was shocked into silence when she saw Carrie holding a gun, with blood soaking through his shoes. Heidi, Carrie, and the cleaner all had pizza together while the couple attempted to speak loud enough to hear over the female victim in the other room crying out for help. Eventually, the cleaner went to sit down on what she thought was a pile of blankets, only to discover a freshly dead body beneath her. Realizing that she knew, Carrie ordered her to stay put, threatening her life. Astonishingly, the woman managed to escape, and at 11:06 p.m. that evening, police received a call reporting what they believed to be a kidnapping in progress. Within minutes, officers established a perimeter around the house and watched as the bloody Heidi calmly walked out of the home, ready to be arrested. Not going down without a fight, Carrie left the residence but refused to drop his weapon. After some back and forth with police recorded on body cams, Carrie was shot and killed. As police entered the home, they found the body of the male victim and the bloody and bruised female still alive inside. She was rushed to the hospital for treatment. Ultimately surviving, the woman remains anonymous to this day. Chillingly, they also found 2 teenagers and animals on the property and quickly found that Heidi nor Carrie owned the home. Jason Harvey was quickly identified as the homeowner and arrested after police believed he had a part to play in the assault and murders. Under questioning, Jason revealed that he had offered a room to Heidi after finding out she had been living in a motel. Soon after she moved in, Carrie would come over and the pair would frequently get into heated arguments. Jason told detectives how he had asked Heidi that Carrie stop coming over to his home, fearing for his teenage children's lives, but that she simply ignored him. Jason was quickly cleared of any wrongdoing after detectives found that he had been at work during the savage attacks. But the same wasn't to be said for Heidi. Despite trying to tell police she had simply assisted Carrie in fear for her own life, her pleas fell on deaf ears. She was soon charged with felony murder, criminal confinement with a firearm, rape, intimidation with a firearm, and assisting a criminal.
She's charged with aiding and inducing rape and murder and criminal confinement. Now, this all stems from the death of Timothy Ivy in August of 2021 at a home on Stinson Avenue in Evansville.
Heidi Carter's trial began on November 28, 2022. Ultimately, the jury failed to convict, and it was recently announced that the now 37-year-old would face a second trial in February of this year.